Welcome back to Echoes and Edges, the Broken and Beautiful podcast. I'm Patria, and this space is where we explore the stories that shape us, the patterns that form us, and the healing that helps us come home to ourselves. In the last few episodes, Daniel Herron and I have been talking about shame, secrecy, and the hidden narratives that shape the way we see ourselves and move through the world. We talked about how certain parts of us get pushed underground through shame, through survival, through the need to belong, and how healing begins as those buried parts are named with compassion. And that's part of why this next conversation matters so much, because once we begin to see what we've been living inside, those patterns we didn't consciously choose, the next question becomes, what are those patterns actually doing? How do they organize the way we respond to stress, to relationships, to conflict, to love, and to leadership? And this is where, at least it's one place where the Enneagram can become really helpful. It's not a labeling system. We don't use it to box us in, but rather to give us compassionate maps, 9 maps or 27 maps if you're working with subtypes, of how we learned to survive. So today I'm joined by Elliott, and together we're exploring the 3 centers of intelligence in the Enneagram: the gut center, the heart center, and the head center, and how each one holds both a survival strategy and a deeper longing, which is seeking, thriving, and abundance. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you again for coming.
Oh, it's always a joy to be with you and to talk about the Enneagram.
Yeah. Something we're both really passionate about, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, before we dive into specific types, give us an idea of how you understand what the gut center itself represents in the Enneagram.
So when I think about the gut center, they are embodied people. They feel in their body. They feel wisdom in their body before their mind can actually tell them what they know. Autonomy is very big for the gut triad. And I think about instinct, control, and anger are parts of how the gut center moves through life. They navigate through power and boundaries and independence. They know in their body more than than the other 2 triads for sure.
Let's talk about anger as an instinctual energy, not just aggression, but how does it show up in each of the numbers in the gut triad?
So when I think about what anger is for each one, anger for an 8 is very energizing. It's what they use to take action. They're very comfortable with anger. They move toward conflict. They are okay with expressing anger. You, as a 9, know that 9s are not comfortable with anger, and they're in the anger triad, but a lot of times they don't even know they're angry because they have to numb that to keep themselves feeling at peace inside.
Mm-hmm.
And 1s are more, they internalize it. It turns inward on them, and it becomes like self-improvement or discipline. And 1s can be uncomfortable with anger because it seems bad and their desire is to be good.
Yeah, and sometime maybe we can talk about even how culture kind of responds to those different types of expressions of anger. So maybe that's for another episode,
Yes.
but that's something to really think about. And I hear you saying that there's like a hidden narrative, like you brought that up. You didn't say those words, but it's a hidden narrative for 8, 9s, and 1s around power and control, chaos and order. Let's talk about, or what are your thoughts? How have you come to understand, even if you just think out loud, what are the hidden narratives that shape each of these types and how they interact with power and control? And you might think about survival strategies or protection or numbing or merging or things like that.
Eights, they don't necessarily want to be in control. They get a bad rap that they're controlling. But what eights do is when there is chaos, if there's not going to be anybody to bring order to a situation, they are very, very comfortable to quote unquote, to take control, to bring order to the chaos. They will use their power, and it can be very positive. But again, I think sometimes people think H's have to be in control. They don't mind if somebody else is in charge. They just don't like it when nobody's in charge. And so I think it's their instinct, probably from childhood. They had to gain some control in a situation that was out of control. So they're very comfortable with it.
That's really well said. I think of the story of eights often having some version of having to grow up too early, that they didn't feel or sense is a better word for eights. They didn't sense someone leading in the family in a way that they needed. How about type nines?
You move away, can disassociate, disconnect, so you don't feel what is inside you. And I think a lot of times you can talk to nines about being angry and they go, I'm not angry. How do you feel that inside you?
Yeah, that thinking about this through that lens of like hidden, even to myself, when we talk about hidden, we're not talking about the type knows exactly what's happening. It's just this kind of subconscious driver. And for type nines, I think that power and control and chaos and order variation, or the way that it varies with type nines, particularly next to type eights, is that withdrawal, like you said, the moving away from instead of going toward. I'm a type 9 who identifies with all of it. So this question's always a little bit confusing to me. I grew up with 2 type 7s, a type 8, a type 1, and a type 2 in my family of origin. So, you can hear all of the energy tends to reside at the top of the Enneagram, diagram. And so as literally right in the middle of all of that, as the type 9 peacemaker, I actually adapted with strategies of adapting to what was required of each of these very energetic types. So I can look quite energetic. I had to come to the conclusion inside of myself that I was actually withdrawing. And I know other type 9s that would describe that. Typically what you see with type 9s is kind of a numbing, a withdrawal from conflict in the room. And I do hard withdraw from conflict, but not with my body, because that's just not how I was formed. But that's how I control it, is I absorb the conflict into my belly button, and then I bring peace, whether it's through mediating words or trying to help everyone see everyone else's side, or just remembering out loud what the other person's story is, so this is how that shows up for me.
I don't know if all 9s are like this. My husband's a 9. He's in the room.
Yep.
But he's not in the conflict.
That's it.
He doesn't get up and leave. He's in the room.
Right.
But he's not in the conflict.
Yes, I can so relate to that. And I think a lot of 9s can relate to physically moving, but not always, because there is a sleepiness to self. It takes an awakeness to get up and leave.
Yes.
And that feels really familiar to me. In fact, I would go toward conflict to be in the room, but not part of the conflict. It was to enact peacemaking. Yeah. And mediation. So moving on to type ones, thinking about survival strategies and this sort of hidden narrative. And you mentioned earlier that conflict, thinking that ones have a conflict with anger itself, right? The anger itself is bad. Well, nines do too, I guess, but ones have a judgment. I guess that's a better way to say it. Ones have a judgment with anger, that anger is bad. And because their motive is about being good, how do you see this hidden narrative showing up for type ones?
The way I view it is like they almost turn it in on themselves. They don't know that they're turning it in on themselves because they don't think it's good to express it out. So they turn it in, they repress it. And repressed anger a lot of times is frustration or bitterness, resentment, but they won't call that. You can say, you look or feel a little angry. What's wrong? And they'll go, I'm not angry. I'm just a little frustrated. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
angry, but they're not doing what I think they should do. They won't name those other things as the root being anger. It's the fruit of anger. But they have they're more comfortable naming frustration, resentment, not probably so much
Irritation.
bitterness, irritation, but to name anger, they have a very hard time going to, no, I'm actually angry, because then they have to bring that paradox. You can be angry and good together. And that's a hard thing for them to marry together.
It's so interesting, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about how that helps them control, because that's the hidden narrative for all of the body types. For ones, you're describing really clearly and cleanly this dichotomy or this juxtaposition of anger and goodness. And so how does that help them control? And I wouldn't say control the narrative, but maybe control themselves is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's a control inside. I have to control my reaction. I have to control my behavior, my thoughts. When you said judgment, that inner critic, we have to kind of bring that into the picture, because for one, they have that berating all day long, telling them you're not good, that wasn't good enough, you're not good enough. And so they have that coming at them. And so I think when they repress anger toward a situation, it's still turned in on them first. And so they want to improve themselves. I got to be better. I've got to work harder. And then that spills out to controlling their environment. But actually, they're controlling themselves first. And then it's spilling out to wanting to bring control to the people around them to improve those people or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So to me, one is very inside out, push and pull for them. It's like it's coming here first and then it's coming out. Sometimes like a fury to the people around them.
Oh, that's so clear what you just said. I just wanted you to thank you for finishing that thought, because that was so clear. And I think it is so important for type ones who are listening to understand this, and for people who love type ones, because I do, much like eights get a bad rap for their, aggression, or like they have to lead. Type ones get a bad rap for being judgmental or critical, or this fury can come out. And I think it's always helpful to remember that if that's coming out from a type one, the compassionate lens helps us see what they're bearing inside first, and that can bring some really productive conversations, because type ones really do have a desire to be good. They're trying to be good, and it's good to remember that idea that all of these strategies are trying to help. They're trying to get us back to that place of innocence, or that place of love, or that place of perfection, that, at least in biblical language, we think about Eden, or we think about the womb. Anything you would want to add as we talk about the genuine ways that these strategies help cope for these types? So thinking of them not as bad necessarily, but as their strategies. And there might be bad things that can come relationally, especially as a result of these things. But again, the compassionate lens of coping.
No, I think when I think of coping in the positive sense, I think of, we've talked about this, you mentioned this in the deeper wisdom. So how does that coping mechanism turn it to bring goodness?
Yeah.
Because there's a way that we've learned, all of us, how to, quote, maneuver and survive.
Yep.
And the negative sides of our survival strategies start working against us. But Enneagram wisdom, that's what I love. It helps us start right siding those so they can start working for us and for the world around us. Because
Oh,
it's the gift that the 8 brings, that, man, that brings protection, that brings justice, that brings mercy to a situation. That energy is there to work for other people. And 8s will take up a cause that a lot of us wouldn't naturally do. It wouldn't scare them. They'll step into it. That's where that right anger that they tap into to bring right action. I think when they learn to move from the gut instinct, which is reactive, to a more grounded wisdom that moves at a slower, especially for an 8 and a 1, a slower pace, a more grounded action. And they go from reactive to taking that gifting in a slower, more intentional way that doesn't bring harm, that brings goodness to a situation.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I think of the impact that 8s naturally have in the world, in their, in the people, to the people around them, that oftentimes, at least in my experience with 8s, they don't even know naturally. They don't realize it's just it's a natural impact. And so when that, like you're describing, that slowing down, or when I'm coaching 8s, I talk about the pause. If you can get a pause in there, then there is this good impact that starts coming just naturally through their centers of intelligence and through their holy idea, or the thing they're trying to get to is innocence, mercy, and so those naturally start coming through with the slowing. What about 9s? What would you say about 9s? I love the gifting that you brought in there, that idea. Yeah.
I think when 9s bring their full selves to a situation, that's when their gifting really comes forth, because they are carrying peace with them. They are carrying the ability to mediate. They're really an ability to hold difficult situations in a way that other people can't hold of it. A 9 has to embody the full presence to bring your power forward. And when that happens, that is where a 9 goes from being passive peace to active peace maker.
I love what you just said there. Yeah. It's not a big shift. It's passive to active. Like the actions don't really change that much, but it's more of the inside awareness, the inside job. And the holy idea for 9s is love. It is love. And it's so good for me as a type 9 to remember that that's harmony and love are very connected in the Enneagram theory. And it's so good for me to pause for myself as a 9 to remember that's what I'm trying to get to. And so how about type 1s? What would you say about type 1s?
Well, we need ones because they are the improvers. They see what's wrong. They can see systems and what's wrong and what's flawed in a way that most of us would miss. But when they can do that from a place of grace, from a place of releasing the perfection and to relax the rigidity that they can hold in their bodies and to bring forth their gifting of, I know how to make this situation better. I know how to improve this, but it's not with, that hard grasp on it. The ones have a hard time in their growth path is receiving grace for themselves. And when they can receive grace for themselves, that's when they can have grace-filled discernment. Because we
Yes.
can't give away what we don't have.
Yes.
So they want to be filled and learn to receive grace. So as they move out, they can bring that good discernment, but it's wrapped in grace.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a contraction and a relaxation. And so the virtue is serenity, but the holy idea is actually perfection. So ones kind of inherently understand that the world is imperfect and wrong. Like you said, they see what's wrong with the world. And the contraction is that bodily anger response to what's wrong, right? And so that release, that rest. In the interest of time, I'm going to just say quickly that nature tends to be helpful for a lot of different types, for a lot of different reasons. But for type 1s, I see it helpful because it's the bigness that gives them perspective of what perfection is and how to be held within something bigger than themselves. And I see that frequently with type 1s. And Ro, what does healthy gut-centered leadership look like?
I think about it being in the gut, embodied groundedness, where they now lead but don't control, where they provide space for all people to come and be part of the greater good. So I think eights, they are actually very good at empowering other people as well. They bring power, and I think it calls out strength in other people. I think a healthy 8 leader, you feel safe with them. You feel safe to risk and to move forward when an 8 is in that healthy space. 9 leaders, Patria, it's gonna make you uncomfortable.
All right, I'm ready to squirm.
Okay, because you're a 9 and you lead this space so well. A healthy 9 makes room for everybody, and everybody has a voice. You don't have to be in the center, but you lead. It's not, again, it's not that passive. You have a leadership that calls us all forward, that calls us all to upward, but it's a collective, as you have called part of what I'm part of the collective. So I get to experience you as a very healthy 9 leader. And I think that's why people like working for 9s.
What a gift your words are. Thank you.
1s are just that great principle. They bring excellence in leadership. Their integrity, I think when they walk in gentle integrity, it just naturally brings everybody up. Everybody wants to walk in that kind of excellence and integrity. That's what ones can call a group to in a beautiful way when they're walking in their gifting.
And in their self-grace, right? That reception of grace.
So I think about instead of power, it's presence. Instead of control, it's trust. Instead of instinct, it's wisdom. That's the shift that they go through.
Can you say that just one more time for listeners? Yeah.
So instead of power, it's presence. Instead of control, it's trust. Instead of instinct, it's wisdom.
Well, let's end right there on this segment because that is a beautiful ending. And there is just something so important here that beneath what can look like anger, control, or avoidance, there's that deeper longing that you're naming what we're trying to get to through these things that aren't working so well anymore.
Yes.
So we're looking for wisdom. We're looking for trust. We're looking for strength. Was that the other one that you said? Presence. Obviously, I'm in the body center because I forget it just as fast as I hear it. Yes. Well, thank you, Ro. So in this first conversation, we've been looking at the gut center, the place in us that responds instinctively, often before we even have words. But for many people, the deeper struggle isn't first about power and control. It's about worth. It's about love, about whether we will be seen and still belong. So in this next episode, we're turning toward the heart center.